So far, more than 5,000 people have died and nearly 14,500 have been infected. The vast majority are in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, and there is concern that the virus is now spreading to Mali. Well, joining me now is Chief Economist for the United Nations Development Program in Africa, Ayodele Odusola. Thank you so much for being with us today. This, of course, was a major topic at the G20. They're talking about providing debt relief. Should we be talking about doing more debt forgiveness, perhaps, for the hardest hit?
Yes, it goes beyond that because there are a number of issues we have to look into before we talk about the issue of debt relief. One, we have to talk about the issue of medical emergency in these three epicenter countries. And at the same time, we have to address the issue of humanitarian impact as well as focus more on development so that the gains we have achieved in these countries over the past decade is not lost in the process. So in terms of debt relief, that would be a welcoming development, and we want to encourage our development partners to make sure that whatever assistance they give to these countries must not be in the form of loan, so that it doesn't create a kind of debt overhang, as was the case over the past 2 decades. So we want a kind of total debt relief where it will not have any serious implication on the repayment later in the future. So it should be in terms of grants so that it helps them to really focus on development issues.
That's right. You know, we talk about the stigma of this, about the need for information. Of course, Ebola's epicenter is in these hardest hit nations in West Africa, but across the continent, very far away from that area, we are seeing reports of travel operators experiencing massive cancellations. We saw a football tournament that was very controversially canceled in one country. How much is of the fear of Ebola hurting the broader African economy?
Well, the impact on Africa is quite huge. For instance, if you look at those 3 countries, for instance, you discover that it has really affected the growth rate of the economy, which they have been experiencing over the past 1 decade. It has been substantially reduced in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea, and we thought it's going to have some kind of ripple effect. But one thing that is very serious is the kind of risk aversion behavior of traders, trading partners, and even neighboring countries, which is really imposing a lot of hardship on the people in these countries. So it's going to be something that is going to really affect not only the 3 countries, but also most countries in West Africa in terms of the implications we're having in terms of flight cancellations, in terms of not allowing people to leave the countries or even enter other countries because of this issue of stigmatization. And I think this is one of the issues the global community must try as much as possible to address. The issue of stigmatization is very important. And at the same time, we have to find a way of curbing the impact of the risk aversion behavior, because it affects investment, it affects import and export to these countries, and it will definitely affect the level of economic activities and livelihood further in these countries.
If we return to the nations the hardest hit, where are we with donations and pledges? Are they keeping up with the need? Are these countries getting what they need?
Well, I think, there has been some improvement over the past few weeks, but we are not yet there. In fact, in terms of what they need, the fiscal implication of that in terms of the Ebola overstressing the spending capacity of the governments in these 3 countries. For instance, you have a situation where the revenue has fallen so drastically in Liberia and at the same time in Sierra Leone, and at the same time you see the spending on the issue to really contain this particular outbreak and treat people and make sure it doesn't spread to areas that are currently not affected, then it's really increasing the cost of running governments in most of these countries, and at the same time it has serious impact on development spending such as infrastructure, building schools, hospitals, and the like. And we think we need to really focus more on making sure that we focus attention on the issue of development spending, because in Syria alone, for instance, about 16 million that was meant for capital spending, that is spending on infrastructure, has been diverted to containing this particular outbreak, and about 20 million in Liberia. It is important we make sure that we don't allow development spending, that is spending on infrastructure, to really suffer as a result of this outbreak.